So, good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organisers, Sonia, everyone that's made all of this possible. About a year ago, I had a first involvement with NASSCOM, and I think the first thing that I've got to say is it's amazing how rapidly the organisation has put design towards the top of its agenda. So, technology, which is what I'm going to yap on about for the next half an hour or so, technology is important. But to mediate what we do with technology and make sure that it's really appealing to end users is really the central function of what design should be doing. So the reason the title is not just building technology products, that was the sort of heading that the organisers asked me to deal with, but the subheading is putting anthropology before technology. So for those of you that are in hardcore programming and software and big data and all the rest of it. I apologise if it looks like I'm putting people before technology, but I firmly believe that that's the approach to delivering a really fantastic technology product. As has kindly been said, I'm by now a bit long in the tooth. I've been doing this for 28 or 29 years. And I just wanted to, at the beginning, unpack what we actually mean by a technology product. So if you ask one individual, they'll say it's an application or it's a piece of software. If you talk to somebody else, they'll say it's an aeroplane from Boeing or Airbus. But I think, and it actually made me think a little bit more deeply about what I mean by a technology product. So in actual fact, back in the day when I started, there was no internet, there was actually almost no digital technology. God help me, that's how old I am. But that doesn't mean that there was not technology incorporated into products. So if you look at the water filter on the left, actually it's a perfectly good product. There's some very smart chemical technology in there in terms of the filter that pulls all the rubbish out of the water. There's some very clever mechanical technology in terms of the way the water flow is managed and all of that stuff. But clearly, if you ask most people in this room, or consumers, is that a technology product? They'll probably say no. The reason for it is, in my view, it's quite simple. First of all, the focus is on the physical in that product. Secondly, it's manual. There's pretty much no automation. There's no smarts in that device at all. And critically, it's isolated. So there's no connectivity to anything else. So you still have a perfectly decent product, but what it consists of is what I call one-time intelligence. And let's say non-technology products generally have got that as one of their features. So the designers, the engineers, the tool makers, all of the people involved in that product had one shot to make it as good as it could be, and then that's it. There's no chance really for upgrading or evolution or any other services. Conversely, if you look at the product in the middle, which is a sort of next generation water filter we're working on. Yes, of course, it's still physical, and we have to pay attention to the quality of the physicality of that object, but it has some smarts in it. It's automated, and probably most importantly of all, it's connected. And once we connect products to other systems and big data and all the rest of it, what that then leads you to is the opportunity to deliver new kinds of services. It gives the opportunity to make that object intelligent. And the big difference between the left and the right-hand side is, I guess, intelligence. Fundamentally, I think that's what technology can bring to the world of products, is a degree of intelligence. And the fascinating thing for me is, back in the day at the beginning, we could only play on the left-hand side. We had one chance to make a product that people were going to find appealing. But now we have a spectrum. We can put a little bit of technology into a physical thing, or conversely, no physical object at all. It's all about services and information design. So the first point I'm trying to make is we've all got a much bigger opportunity than we ever had before, because we can think about new business models, we can combine physical with digital, we can combine what I'm calling one-time intelligence with evolving intelligence and services. So actually everything has got better if you're in the design and innovation game. So just a couple of examples here of that contrast between a purely physical thing and a so-called technology product. So on the left, there's what I think is a really rather beautiful bit of industrial design, but it's just a water bottle with a little filter in it. And on the right, this is a startup company from the US who I think are doing the usual Kickstarter thing to get some money. And their idea is to put a degree of intelligence into a water bottle, make it communicate, surprise, surprise, with an application that sits on your phone. And their sort of USP, I think, is that somehow you might need an application to tell you when you're thirsty. So just think about it for a minute. I wish them well, because designers need to support one another. But really the point I'm making here is, and this is central to what I'm trying to say today, we just need to be careful where we put the focus of the technology. Because the easiest thing in the world is to convince yourself that there's a fantastic idea by joining a water bottle with an application, and maybe you end up with something that nobody needs, okay, to get a waste of time. Conversely, this little product that's come from a studio based in the US is nothing more complex than a night light for children, so something that keeps them comforted in the evening. Plugs into a standard wall socket. But what they've done is incorporate, in a very focused way, some very simple sensors. So for example, as well as keeping the child, let's say, comfortable, there's a smoke sensor, there's an infrared sensor, and there's a motion sensor. So here's a really simple, affordable device that is actually doing something relevant to consumers at the end of the day, and they're using technology in the right way. So, just for fun, audience participation, on the subject of kickstarting and investing, if you had to put your rupees or your dollars somewhere, would it be the bottle that tells you when you're thirsty, or would it be the thing that, in a very simple, understated way, brings an improvement to your home life? So, hands up who's for the water bottle and who's for the night light. Water bottle. Brave man. Night light? Okay. So, that's a bit of a cheesy trick, but I think I've already kind of made my point that the correct application of the correct technologies is probably the single biggest challenge in this very exciting and diverse technology world that we live in. Second question, how can great technology really help us? Right? So here's my attempt at a joke. Of course, if we think about the world of gaming and virtual reality and all the rest of it, and there's masses of money to be made in this category, let's say, then technology can help us have loads more fun and maybe forget about some of the problems that we've got globally. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, although I did read in the newspaper yesterday that there's a digital support centre in Bangalore that is growing very rapidly because there's so many kids that spend their whole time gaming. They don't even take a break to eat or drink or sleep. So there's a dark side to all this stuff as well. But really, without sounding like, I guess, too much of an eco-warrior, for me, the really big opportunities are to think about how technology products can, for example, help us in the energy sector. So there are lots of new technologies coming up that can generate energy, but much more importantly, it's about monitoring it, putting energy where it needs to be, and not wasting it. So whole load of smart networks. We've heard a lot about connected cities and smart cities. There's a massive opportunity to leverage technology products in the right way to help us reduce energy wastage. I think that's also very true of what I call the food and water challenge. We know across this country, but actually it's becoming a global issue, water supply, managing water, making sure that from a supply chain point of view, we can manage what we're doing in food, how we produce it, how we transport it much better. And again, if you just dig a little bit below the surface, there is a huge amount to be done with technology and physical products to improve all of that as well. I guess the overall point here is as we move from physical businesses, actually manufacturing stuff, into a world where more people can make their living from virtual business, from delivering services, actually what we're going to do is save stuff, because hopefully there will be a lot less wastage of physical stuff, because a lot of it's running out. So most of all, I think, you know, the really big picture, apart from getting some funding and making some money, technology products should be able to make us much more sustainable across the globe. So the point was made to me while we were having a chat outside that even today, your typical US consumer will use 4 or 5 times as much as an Indian consumer, right? So, which is just not sustainable. Right. Other things that technology products can do for us. We at Tata Elxsi have coined this term leisurenomics. We all know that in our busy lives, we have less and less and less time for ourselves, either because we're working too hard, because we have to, or because we want to. So there's also an area of leisure and social activity that I think technology products can help us with. And I think that goes beyond just watching a movie on a smartphone on a bus. There's a whole area of opportunity that is going to help us do leisure in a new way using technology. And of course, maybe the biggest of all, technology products are going to help us hopefully live a bit longer, as long as we don't spend our whole time sitting looking at an iPad, in which case we will have a heart attack very early on. But it's clear that distributed healthcare, telemedicine, maybe even wearables are going to have a big impact on health in the future. So that's another massive opportunity. I'd also like to say that some of the time, typical consumers think of technology as being a really heavy thing, right? It means that I get push mails through my phone. It means that the bank can hassle me more easily. And I do think that certainly industrial designers should also be thinking about how technology can actually bring some delight into our lives, as opposed to just yet more confusion. So this is, I think, a lovely product from a French company. They actually developed OLED and AMOLED lighting technologies, but they've effectively distributed for free this lighting technology to a whole group of, a network of artists who have produced these kind of delightful objects. So there's a bit of delight from technology. And in the final assessment, I think a technology product is like any other product, whether it's 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Really what it seeks to do is to deliver an amazing experience to your end user with as little waste as possible. That's almost the acme of what I think a great technology product should be. The big question is, of course, how you're sure that what you're going to develop is going to be appropriate and desirable. So at Tata Elxsi, and I'm sure many other companies, remembering the importance of consumer insight in the first place, and thinking about the actual need case and shaving down, or let's say taking all the fat off that need case until you get to precisely what the consumer needs is really the trick at the beginning of the process. So we all know that, or we should know, if we think globally now, outside of India, consumers are changing very rapidly. I use this slide quite a lot, so apologies if some of you have seen it before. But really the point of it is, both of these consumers, these people, let's not keep calling them consumers, both of them look the same. The guy on the left and the guy on the right, they're kind of slightly Asian looking, and they're both wearing this sort of rather tweedy suit. But the point here is, the guy on the left is doing it for real, that's the way he wants to live, and the guy on the right is making a kind of slightly twisted fashion statement. So unless you go and talk to these people, you might assume that your product, your technology product, would be appropriate for both of them. The fact is they are at polar opposites of your consumer spectrum. So it's desperately important that we get real insight from real people at the beginning of the process. Obviously, people are much more globalized, so they're picking and choosing what they like or don't like from across the globe. So for many people, it isn't about a sort of monoculture anymore. It's a much more kind of eclectic mix. And again, understanding which bits of their life is important to them and which is not is actually getting more difficult because people have got much more choice. But we still need to understand them. I think often when I talk to technology companies or even tech startups, they've got this idea that really there is a single consumer they're going to focus on who is either middle class or quite wealthy, and that's how they're going to make their first 500 crores. But the fact is, I think there are massive opportunities for technology products for people that are less well paid, maybe even people that don't live in cities. So we shouldn't forget that there are big opportunity areas there as well. Depends on the business model. And a little build on that point, I think technology products, especially if we think about pushing media to people and entertainment and all of those things, it's very easy to imagine that it's going to be city-centric or super city-centric. But in actual fact, there is also a massive opportunity, for example, in agriculture. We're currently beginning a project that's looking at deploying analytics and some very clever bits of sensor technology into the agribusiness. And if you really look at it globally, that opportunity for technology products hasn't even really started. Okay, so there's a big opportunity there too. And of course, the spectrum of consumers that we have to deal with has only got bigger. So there are opportunities for the very old, and that isn't just in healthcare, that's in connectivity, that's making sure that people don't end up being lonely. There's the potential even to give older people a so-called second life using technology products. And at the other end of the spectrum, there's huge opportunity for education. The way that kids are absorbing technology and using it is evolving very rapidly. So I think technology products can help with some of the biggest problems that we've actually got on or biggest issues that we've got on the planet today. So these are just some examples. I'm sure Idiom and most other design consultancies do exactly the same thing, but it's critical, I think, especially for startup companies to understand that there are lots and lots of tools that exist and have been proven to help gain customer insight or consumer insight at the beginning of a project. These are just some of them that we use regularly at Tata Elxsi. Prototyping is also something that we build into everything we do. Of course, most bigger companies do it. Many smaller companies or startups assume that if they ask their mother and their grandfather and 5 other of their friends, if they think their technology idea is great, then that's enough. But the reality is that going through a proper process of prototyping to validate both the technology and the product itself is a critical step before you push something into production. If I go back one, that might sound like an obvious point. It doesn't really matter whether it's a physical product or a UX or an HMI or an interface, it's the same principle. So I think our nearly favorite example of what can go wrong, anybody that's ever bought a microwave, we did quite a big study on microwaves across the whole of India, nobody can use the damn things. If you talk to the lead engineer, probably Korean or Japanese, perhaps, they'll tell you that the technology is the best available. Low power, the magnetron works well, we can do all kinds of different, cooking functions with this amazing machine. We didn't find a single consumer that even used the product. So in some cases, the lady of the household was delivered this microwave as a gift, and she almost couldn't tell her husband that she never used the damn thing, because if you look at the interface on the top there, it's essentially unusable. So that's a good example. Even giant corporations who put a lot of R&D effort into their technology product that ends up not being used by anybody, which is a bit of a waste if you ask me. And so sort of leads me to, I guess, the pivot of what I'm trying to say. Is there a danger in some cases that we begin to push technology for its own sake? So just because we can do something with a piece of software or a network or analytics or whatever it might be, we need to be very clear that that's the right thing to do, because we know that our lives are getting increasingly overloaded. And actually, I believe that what people want from technology products is, this is a piece of interface work we did in the automotive business. Really what people want is purity and clarity and simplicity. But most of all, has to be immediately useful to us. So the number of tech products or bits of software that I've interacted with, where I would say, in the first place, I don't even really understand what the benefit is to me. And that's, you know, a critical error, in my view. And that's where design can come in. My colleague, Narain, who's joined us this morning, he made me aware of this amazing application. Has anyone heard of an app called Moments? So somebody's had the insight to realize that so many people are spending so much time looking at their smartphones that what this application does is tell you when you're using it too much. So that's where we've got to. Sorry? 10 minutes, okay. And I think one of the big themes that we're heading towards is moving away from staring at devices into what I call let's say, a heads-up environment. So we're going to see a lot of stuff happening beyond Google Glass. I think much of the interaction that we have is going to move beyond the smartphone into some much more exciting areas. So this is a snapshot from another startup based in Silicon Valley called Magic. And they've got an awful lot of funding and investment. I think Google's invested in a bunch of other people. So they believe that they've got a completely new form of interface that will have nothing to do with staring at a screen, which I think is also a massive opportunity. I couldn't not talk about technology products without talking about wearables. I'm not entirely convinced yet. I think there's probably an opportunity for somebody to evolve this thing on the wrist. But I do wonder if there's an even bigger step that's going to come. So we've heard about technology built into our clothing. There's lots of tricky reasons why that hasn't happened yet. But I myself am not entirely convinced about having computers strapped to our wrists. But that's open for debate. Potentially, what we will move to is the disappearance of devices. So what we're calling ear or air interface, probably it will happen more through audio than it will looking at a screen, or maybe it'll end up being both. So I think one of the biggest changes is the fact that the hardware that we've got used to having in our purses or pockets may potentially disappear over time. And we'll experience a form of ambient computing where it's just around us. In a way, the opposite of that, what we're also seeing is a really fascinating set of technologies that are bringing the digital or the virtual world back into the physical domain. So the image on the left there is from MIT, and they're looking at how we can manifest digital data in a much more physical way, because at the end of it, we're physical creatures, and not being able to touch something or feel something is still quite alien to us. So I think there's going to be some fascinating developments in that area as well. As a build on that, if you look at this delightful image in the middle here, there's a group of, I think, Dutch-based artists who are using a mixture of gesture and these quadcopter drones to effectively orchestrate a kind of aerial ballet, which I think is an amazing application of technologies. If we talk about the internet of, well, I call it the internet of unexpected things, lots of people seem to be saying that the only devices or the only things we'll connect will be traditional technology product, like lamps or kettles or washing machines. But I'm not sure that I want my kettle arguing with my washing machine in my kitchen in the future. I think it's going to be a disaster. So the thing that fascinates me is when we will start connecting unexpected objects. So perhaps this sofa has got a series of sensors in it. Maybe it can tell who's sitting on the sofa. Maybe it senses what kind of mood I'm in and talks to my TV. And we haven't really seen that yet. So that's another big area of opportunity, is to think about connecting unexpected things in unexpected ways. But one thing is for sure, and I repeat the point about opportunity, the way that we connect with the world, whether it's us into the digital sphere or digital coming back and manifesting itself in a physical way, is going to change pretty rapidly. So we're seeing the beginnings of that, but I think those companies that focus on those themes have got big opportunity. I suppose we were promised robots by now, and I think even Dyson, which is a very big techno product company based out of the UK, had said they were going to launch a robot cleaner, but we haven't really seen it yet. So I think it will come, and again, those people that are into robotics, whether it's for healthcare or domestic products, have got big opportunities ahead of them. If we think about mobility, there's lots of talk about smart cities or smart corridors being built within India and across most of Asia. So how is our journey to work going to improve with the correct application of technology? Maybe we're not going to end up owning a car or a two-wheeler. There'll be a completely integrated system from bus to train to maybe a rented two-wheeler. And I think we're going to see some amazing developments in new cities that are coming up that use technology in the right way. And of course, we at Tata Elxsi, through our EPD group, are doing a huge amount of work in advanced driver assistance, intelligent vehicles, vehicles that communicate with the environment and back again. So if you ask me, the ultimate accessible technology product in the future is probably going to be on four wheels. And the promise of an autonomous vehicle, maybe even a shared autonomous vehicle, is actually not all that far away. There are some legal issues to get over, but it's fascinating. As soon as you connect a four-wheeler to the environment and four-wheelers that can talk to one another, you get a completely different paradigm, which is very exciting. Final couple of points. There is also a trend to what is called anti-tech. I think I shouldn't say we split the world in two, but there are definitely lots of people for whom the advance of technology is actually rather scary, and they feel much more comfortable with beautiful physical objects. I also think that many more people are looking for personalization in their products. So if we think about, obviously there's 3D printing, but there are other technologies that are coming up that will perhaps let us design our own products. And that's been talked about, but we haven't seen it yet. Fascinating for me, this is a fan with some solar cells on it. And it charges itself up in the day, and then in the nighttime, it becomes basically a torch. Now, that's a very whimsical application of what I call technology meets craft. And I think the point here is there's another big opportunity to essentially hide technology inside objects that have got some hand-making, they've got some humanity to them. And then if we look at essentially I'm taking an arc from the digital all the way back to the physical. There are some really amazing developments in materials out there. So this is a thing called electroactive polymer. If you put a charge through it, it changes its shape. And there are all kinds of things that we can do from a physical point of view with materials like this. I think, big question, what we've heard about taptics from Apple on their watch. But there are also a whole bunch of opportunities in terms of the way that we interact with the world. So active and reactive surfaces, whether it's on devices, on our wallpaper in the home, on our sofas, on the inside of our vehicles. There's also a lot of work being done on making an emotional connection between ourselves and our products, technology products. So products that actually react to the way we feel, that change the environment or change the ambience is another big evolving area in tech products. And I guess coming all the way back to the beginning, there's also some fantastic work happening in developing new kinds of materials that, from a physical point of view, are very delightful. They're either recycled or they're upcycled. And when you put, for example, the object on the left, together with some technology, maybe it's wearable, I think we get a brand new kind of product paradigm. And that's the thing that interests me the most. So if I were to conclude on the subject of great technology products, really it's not about technology first, maybe it's not even about people, but it's the intersection of anthropology and technology. And I guess for me, the most important things, if I can list them out, are let's make sure it's human-centered. Let's really make sure it's relevant to our lives. We shouldn't forget the fact that physicality is what we're about, and making a technology product physically delightful as well as digitally delightful is another way that we can guarantee success. The experience, some people do it very well, the Apples and Googles of this world, but there are still too many examples of tech products, whether they're physical or software, that are really not seamless at all. They're good in some places and then dreadful in others. So let's focus on delivering a seamless experience. I think not just for the wealthy, because there are massive numbers of people that can benefit and who actually have got some small amount of money to pay for a tech product. And most importantly of all, I think if we're going to do something useful with all these amazing tools we've got, we have to make sure that tech products help us become more efficient and less wasteful in everything we do. And I think, as a final note, that's something that the Indian design thinking mind is extremely good at. There's a frugality and an efficiency to the way that designers here have to think that supports that idea of becoming more efficient and less wasteful. So that's me. Thank you very much for listening. Sure.
Thank you so much, Nick. I've always heard about emotional design, but I loved your tagline there about anthropology meets technology. There's something about emotional design. There's something about design itself that's very human-centered and it's all about the physicality of design. So thank you for that wonderful talk and kicking off this experiment from NASSCOM in terms of the Design Summit. And by way of thank you,
ooh, a tray.
Here's a little gift on the tray.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any, after that rather over-the-top ramble, any question from anybody, if we have time for 5 minutes maybe?
Yeah, we could take a couple of questions if you have any.
Please.
Two products which Tata Elxsi is working on right now with the help of technology is what?
I knew you were going to ask that question, and same old, probably not. And there's a journalist I know very well who's smiling because she asked me the same question. I guess the issue that any industrial design consultancy faces, especially with technology involved, is that most of what we're doing is secret. But for example, we are doing a bit of work in wearables, potentially, if we get lucky, quite a bit more. We're doing a fair amount of work in, let's say, the digital environment, so where interface and information actually brings an environment to life, as opposed to a product. Quite a lot of work in both broadcast and, let's say, the intersection of automotive and broadcast and connectivity that I did mention. So those are the top-level themes, but whether I can show you a live project, probably not at the moment. Yes. Yes, we are, because and that's one of the reasons I put it as a theme. If you look at productivity across India, we obviously, one of our group companies is excuse me, Tata Chemicals, who sell a lot of fertilizers and all of that stuff to farmers. They have an amazing network of people on the ground who are talking to people that work in the agricultural sector. There's more, I guess, more opportunity to improve productivity than you can imagine. And that's the information feed that we're getting. Is there's a huge amount to do in the agricultural business, specifically with the application of technologies. So I won't say much more than that, but we are definitely working in that area. Welcome.
Bureau,
shout.
So what I was saying is it's easier to think from an engineer's point of view, from the technology point of view. So coming from a technology background, it's difficult for me to think from a designer's point of view, right?
Yeah.
So, and I see that, you know, a lot of things what we're talking about is we need to change, there's a lot of mindset change that needs to be there. So what could be the best way that, you know, see the surroundings and, you know, learn from them and probably, you know, change your mindset? What could be the best things that, you know, one can start from?
Well, congratulations to you. I think you've made the first step by even being here this morning at a conclave that's about design as much as it is about technology. You know, all the obvious stuff. I used to say to people, you know, get up and get out there. So the more we spend time obsessing about what it is that we do, either as designers or engineers, the less likely it is that we're going to learn from other people. So maybe going to a design exhibition or an art gallery or something wouldn't be your first choice of a Saturday morning. But if you push yourself to go and do that, then we'll have a conversation, more conversations with designers, then I think building that bridge between the two disciplines is more likely to happen. So there's a final, very simple thing that I can do is actually sit down and design something. So I once said to some of our salespeople at Tata Elxsi, some of them who clearly didn't understand what design was, said, okay, it's a very simple exercise. I'm going to give you a design brief, and you've got half a day to design something. And they looked terrified, because they said, it's not my job, I don't know anything about design. So actually, the act of going through the process, you know, maybe even set yourself a very simple brief for something that isn't software. Maybe it's a physical product. And as you do it, you begin to realize where the challenges are, and you draw something or you imagine something, and then you say, would I myself actually go and buy that? If the answer is no, then there's a whole set of other questions that help you to improve the thing. So if you want to understand design better, why don't you have a go at it? That might be one way of doing it. And the very final thing I'd say is, in a sense, the reverse is true. So when I began my career, it was all about physical stuff and injection molding and machining and what have you. The challenge for all designers is actually to keep up with what the technocrats are doing. We need to understand what the possible is, what the art of the possible is. So in a sense, it's two-way. You're expressing that you need to understand what this design thing is, but equally, it's contingent on designers to really understand. I mean, I'm never going to be a coder because I'm not clever enough, but I do need to understand what technology enables me to do from a design point of view. So it's two-way. And the more conversations there are, the better it will be.
Thank you so much.
Super, thanks.